Today we're going to deal with two of the biggest questions facing beginner and intermediate guitarists. First, how do I turn scale patterns into actual music? And second, how do I practice scales to get the most out of them? We'll review two common ways to play scale patterns up and down the fretboard, and then I'll show you how to use these patterns as tools to play better solos. So you may be familiar with what's referred to as the cage system. It's really just the way the guitar is laid out in standard tuning. But it essentially breaks the fretboard up into 5 positions. In the key of A, you get these 5 voicings for an A major chord. And with each of these 5 positions, you can play an A major scale. And the same exact thing goes for an A minor chord. And we can use these positions to play, for example, an A minor pentatonic scale. Now you can use these 5 patterns to learn any scale, and it's a really thorough way of mapping things out across the fretboard. But it's common that people feel a little bit boxed in by these shapes. So another way to look at the minor pentatonic scale is in a diagonal fashion, where you actually move up the positions as you ascend the scale. And you can start these diagonal patterns on any of the 5 notes of the minor pentatonic. Right there, I started on the flat 7, the note G, and then went to the root. But we can move that up and start on the root. We can start it on the minor 3rd. That's a really nice pattern that ends right on the root. We can start it on the 4th degree. Or we can start it on the 5th. So these are some really nice ways for learning scales, but how do we actually start making music with this stuff? The key is to take a few notes at a time and come up with some simple melodic phrases. And I can't stress enough how important it is to practice within the context of a song. So today I've got a simple 1-chord vamp backing track with a nice drum groove underneath. This is going to give us a space to practice in so that as we start stringing together ideas, they make sense rhythmically and melodically. Now, once we get some simple melodic ideas happening, we can use these scale patterns as blueprints to start moving these ideas around the fretboard. And this is where your own personal creativity and discovery really starts to open up. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate this exercise by playing a simple motif that happens over 4 bars of this groove. And it's going to consist of 3 very simple phrases from the A minor pentatonic scale. And I'm going to start out by playing in this position right in the middle of the neck based around the 5th fret, this box pattern that many of you probably already know. Now the first of these 3 phrases goes like this. Here it is again. This is going to be a pickup into the downbeat that's going to kind of set up our little 4-bar chunk of this groove. Now we're going to follow this up with another very simple melodic phrase. Again, we're just picking a few notes from the scale. that first phrase just used the root, the minor third, the fourth, and the fifth. So really just 4 notes. This next phrase, we're going to use the flat 7, and we're going to go use a few little grace notes like the flat 5 just to embellish the pentatonic scale. Here it is again. So now those 2 phrases together. So again, really simple note choices, but we're beginning to build a motif, a melodic theme that kind of makes sense when we string these together, these ideas together. And again, we're not just trapped in sort of meandering through a shape. Now, to finish up the 4-bar phrase, we're just going to play a very simple little button on the end. That's just root, flat 7, root, minor third, root. So all together. Here's what it sounds like along to the backing track. All right, so now we can take these simple phrases and start moving them around through the 5 positions of the cage shapes, right? So I'm going to start out by moving this down to the lower position. And instead of starting on this root here, I'm going to start on this root here. Again, so as you're working through this stuff, you can use this as a way to learn your notes around the fretboard. I tend to think in terms of intervals. So I'm always thinking about the root, the third, fifth, things like that. But you can also use this to learn your actual note names where they fall around the fretboard. But we're going to start on the root, this note A here, and we're going to play the same phrase but in a different position on a different set of strings. And it's going to present some different options and some different opportunities with fingerings. And that's the main difference that happens when you start moving things around the fretboard. The fingerings change. The types of embellishments you can put on the licks changes, and your choices may change. It may open up some different things, different directions you want to go with it, because maybe some new things are available to you in that position. But here's the same phrase played down here. We have the first lick, then our second lick, and finally our little button. Right, so quite a different fingering, but here's what that one sounds like along to the backing track. Now let's move up to the position above this basic 5th fret position. Now we're going to play off of this root right here, and we're going to play. Right, that has a really nice sound to me on the thicker strings. It feels very nice, and it falls under the hands really nicely. Now we can play our next lick. And finally our little tag at the end. Right, so some of these things may open up new ideas for you and new hand positions for you, because you know, a lot of us, when we start messing around with pentatonic blues licks and rock licks, we tend to play in a couple of the same positions. And it takes some time to get familiar with these other positions. And if you just sit there and practice the scale shapes, running them up and down, you don't necessarily discover ways to play these licks in these positions. It's all about taking an existing idea, an existing phrase or melodic idea or lick that you have, and moving it through the positions. Then you get these new and interesting ways of playing things like. So now let's move this up to another position. We're going to play off of this A note on the 12th fret of the A string, and we can play. Again, a whole new sound because we're playing on the lower, thicker strings, and yet an even different fingering. Now, one final position we can play this thing. We've got this A note on the 14th fret of the G string. We can play. So let's hear how these sound along to the backing track. I'll move through all 5 positions. All right, so now that we've played these simple phrases in each of the 5 positions and isolating them to those 5 specific spots, we can start blending them together by taking the fingerings that feel most comfortable and combining them with fingerings from the other positions. For instance, for that first phrase, I might take this fingering right here, but then combine that with the next phrase from the lower position. So then I wind up with something like this. And I can even drop things down an octave if I want to play that last phrase right here. Right, so again, these patterns, these scale patterns and these positions are really just a blueprint for your own creativity and whatever you hear as you're improvising and as you're composing solos. So again, I can take another example. I might play out of this position up here and play that first phrase up on the upper strings. That feels really nice under my fingers. It's very comfortable to play right there. And then I can slide up here to this next position and grab the next lick. And then come back down to the other position. That way everything lays out on the top strings and it has sort of a uniform sound, and it feels really good to play under my hands. So as you start breaking these larger scale patterns down into smaller bite-sized pieces, you can start moving those pieces around and finding where they fall in all the different positions. Then, as you get more comfortable with the bigger scale patterns, you can use each one of these positions to flesh out further ideas and come up with more melodic phrases. So I'm going to play along to the backing track a little bit now, and I'm just going to kind of take this little exercise that we demonstrated, and I'm going to further elaborate on this by keeping it simple and playing very concise, short, simple phrases that sort of fit this 4-bar rhythmic motif. But I'm going to show you how you can really stretch out and expand this A minor pentatonic sound all over the fretboard. Alright guys, if you'd like the tabs and notation for the examples in this lesson, along with this backing track, head over to my Patreon page. It's a great way to support this channel. All my links are down in the description. And until next time, happy practicing and take care.